Back to the Coach's Corner Show, brought to you by Beggar's Pizza. If you're just joining us, we are at Athletex Sports and Orthopedic Physical Therapy, 4004 West 111th Street in Oak Lawn. Physical therapist Tom Mulvey is our guest, and great location, Tom. I know you're celebrating your year anniversary over here. You know, you can't beat it. You need a little something to eat. You got the Breakfast Club next door. You need to go get a tan. The tanning place is a couple doors down. And if you after work, you want to sit back and watch some games and imbibe a little bit, you got Riley's daughter.
Yes.
So it's all good.
A lot of activity.
A lot of activity, a lot of options for you.
Yes.
All right, before we went to break, we were talking about types of muscle fibers.
Yes.
Tom.
So we talked a little bit about the type 1 fibers, which are fibers that are more endurance in nature. There's also type 2. The type 2 fibers are divided into two main sets. Some will say there's a third set. The type 2As are a little bit closer to that endurance set in the type 1, but the type 2s are more explosive, more fast twitch, quicker tension, the ability to react quicker. Type 2 of the B fibers are entirely that way, very effective at being able to generate force. There's a type 2C that some say may or may not be able to be converted into the type 1s. There's research that says it possibly can happen, but the critical thing that we want to talk about is that, genetically, we're born with these percentages of fibers in our body.
Okay.
And so, there are some kids that are truly built to be cross-country endurance runners, and there's others that you look at that are definitively an offensive lineman. And the ability to change the fiber type, the quantities of fiber type in those people really is not that much. What can happen though is that training can truly make the fibers that they have more efficient, without a doubt. And so when you're trying to increase the speed of a lineman, you can make that lineman react and become quicker, as you can make the endurance person stronger. But the main thing that we want to keep in mind is that really you cannot push people of certain fiber types into activities where they're just really not made to do.
Right. If you're not blazing speed, you're probably not going to develop that blazing speed, right, Tom? It is pretty much you're locked in.
And the development of the sequences that we talked about are critical so that they can evolve and efficiently develop the way that we want.
Okay. And how is this all impacted by injury, Tom?
We know, as we talked a little bit earlier, about the nerves that come into those muscle fibers, and those nerves are the ones that really determine how active those fibers are and how they develop into type 1 or type 2 fibers. But there's also the kinesthetic receptors that come into play, and there's a lot of sensory perception that's done around the joints where these muscles occur. So injury, we found, is that there is also a decrease in the efficiency of those nerves to function.
Yep.
So these people lose a little bit of the quality of their ability to know where perhaps the joint is in space. We also know that injury plays a major role in the type 1 fibers, those fibers that give the certain joints endurance. They kind of change in a way in which they become smaller, lose some of the critical anatomy, the mitochondria and some of the capillary density. Those things change with injury. Rehab can quite effectively bring those things back. But it plays a major role when you look at taking those athletes now from going through an injury, and making sure that as we get them better and turn them out into training, that everybody's on the same wavelength.
Yep.
And we go an efficient path.
Okay. And you talk about training, what are the effects of training?
The two things that we look at, number one, is that if you have somebody, let's say, that has a lot of type 1 fibers, and you put that person into impact loading or loading that has that really is targeted for the type 2 type fibers, that you're putting that person really at risk, and
Yep.
you need to make sure that they're able to take that load, as vice versa. If you take somebody that's rich in type 2 fibers, and you know who that athlete is, you can see by body type how they are, If you subject them and try to put a lot of load to develop those type 1s, you put them at risk of injury. So we need to create a balance of both.
And the key is to identify that, right?
To be able to identify it and direct them down the right path.
Okay. And what are concerns for training?
Well, my concerns would be, number one, that that you're really in touch with the person that's doing that training. Number two, that you as a parent have an idea of what is happening here, which is what I hope with these segments that we bring out, so that you can be an active participant here and really have a good idea as to what they're doing. We don't want injury in training, and when we get them in therapy and steer them down an effective path, we don't want to go in a direction in which, as they rehab and we release them into training, that the progression is too quick, or that there is any cause for delay in their return.
Yep, and then parents should be involved in their athlete, their kids' training and rehabilitation and everything. So, okay, folks, we are going to go to, coincidentally, ironically, an athletics timeout. All right, we come back, we're going to get into some endurance, muscle development, and some other things here with Tom Mulvey, so stay tuned.